All right, I think we are ready to get started. I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us today, spending your afternoon with us. We are really excited to speak with you and tackle some of these really difficult questions that we've been receiving from our clients over the last 6 to 8 weeks. Can you believe it's been 8 weeks, 8 weeks? What day is it? I don't know. Today we're going to tackle 4 topics for this webinar on co-parenting during the coronavirus. We're going to tackle child support, co-parenting in difficult situations. We're going to take this from both the perspective of from the legal standpoint and from a mental health standpoint, and give you some tips and let you know, hey, what can I do right now? What's available to me? What are my options within the court system during this pandemic? And I am joined by 3 amazing women. 2 of my colleagues happen to be with us today, Caperton Fischer and Kristiana Butler. And we are also joined by the amazing Nicole Stover, who is a mental health professional here in Austin. So I am going to kick it over to Kelly Fischer and let her introduce herself.
I'm Kelly Caperton Fischer. I'm an attorney in the Austin office.
Hi, I'm Christy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, no, I was just kicking it to you.
I'm Kristiana Butler. I'm also an attorney in the Austin office, and we have Nicole Stover with us.
Hi, I'm Nicole Stover, and I am a psychotherapist in Austin.
So before we get started, we're going to do a couple housekeeping rules. We are going to use the chat feature, and you'll see that I messed up and send a message to the whole webinar. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat feature that you click on chat, and while we're talking about whatever subject we're talking about, I'm going to encourage you to click on that chat feature and send us your questions. We will review the questions, and one of us will answer it either during the presentation or within that chat feature. Another thing I want to let you guys know is that, this is a public forum. We are not giving legal advice today. This is information for you to have so that, you can discuss your options potentially with your attorney. So keeping that in mind, let's get started.
Okay, so Angie, we've been hearing a question from a lot of clients, concerns about losing their job, being furloughed, not able to pay child support this month. Can you start off with kind of a primer on how to modify child support in Texas?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question because with everything being so uncertain right now, our clients are wondering how they're going to make these child support payments. What you need to know, and I think what you're going to hear from all the panelists today, is your current order stands. So first thing you want to do is reflect back to that current order and see what the child support payment is supposed to be. You also want to look at the date that order was entered. And so I want you to think about it this way. I want you to think about there's 2 ways to modify child support. Think about it as the 3-year rule and a material and substantial change rule. With that 3-year rule, it's been 3 years, and your new support payment would differ by 20% or $100. You may be able to modify. But let's put that aside for a second, because for most of our clients, they're talking about being unemployed or being furloughed, or possibly not even being able to find employment for a while. And in that case, you may be able to modify child support, or the person paying may be able to modify child support if they become unemployed.
What does happen if they become unemployed, Angie?
If they become unemployed, there's no automatic child support has been suspended. Again, your order stands. If they've become unemployed, then one of the best things to do, or maybe to consider, is filing that modification right away. Why do you want to file a modification suit right away? Well, if down the line the judge orders a new child support number, they may be able to retroactively apply that child support number to the first day of the month after you applied for the modification. So let me give you an example. Say they're paying $500 in child support right now, and they successfully modify 2 months from now to, I don't know, $300. Well, if they filed their modification today, then the court would say, ma'am or sir, your new child support amount will be effective as of May 1st. You will pay $300 as of May 1st. Does that make sense, Kristiana?
So it's kind of like a time machine.
It is kind of like a time machine. It's not a guaranteed time machine, but it's certainly something that, as part of the legal strategy, you want to assert when you're trying to modify your child support. So a lot of parents right now are thinking, you know, if I lose my job and I get unemployment, what then? I'm the payor. I've lost my job. I am going to receive unemployment. And will that factor into the income and to the general amount that child support is calculated from? And the answer is potentially. I mean, when we calculate child support, we're looking at historically what the person paying has earned. It's not about the person receiving in most instances, it's about the person who is paying child support. So you got to keep that in mind. If you have become unemployed and you are paying child support, you seek to modify that child support, your unemployment amount will factor into that new child support amount.
Well, I have a couple clients that are actually getting along really well, and one of the partners has lost a job, and so the other partner is offering to say, you don't need to pay child support this month, or you can pay just whatever you can. Are they allowed to do that? What's going to happen in the future if they do that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I had a client come to me and say, you know, my ex is behind on child support. I know that the IRS intercepted his stimulus check and it's going to go towards whatever amount he owed me. I'd like to give him that amount back. Is that okay? We've had, you know, agreements where people want to lower those child support payments. In that sense, my advice would be this. With child support, the rules are really rigid. We have the Attorney General who is keeping track of all the payments that are made. So if someone does not make a payment, they assume that they're behind in their child support payments. There's also other documents out there that look official that say, you know, I've received this payment. In fact, I haven't received this payment, but I'm saying I'm receiving this payment. I would stay away from informal agreements and even documents that look official. What I would say is probably the best thing for clients in this situation is to trust, for the person paying, trust the person that's receiving, and for the person receiving, take that money that you've received and give it back to that person who paid you. That way, this record that is keeping track of all of these child support payments shows that the payment was made, but you have given that money back to help your ex-partner or the parent of your children to, you know, stay afloat during these times.
Angie, we have a good question from one of the people viewing the webinar right now. They're asking if a person has just lost their job and is not making much money, maybe getting a little bit of unemployment, and has not filed a modification. If they go to court and file, what are we talking about for the reduction amount? Can you explain a little bit about how far back courts are really going to look and whether it's going to be just looking at the immediate payment or what kind of parameters do they get?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question. There's a big question mark over that because you want it from the person receiving child support payments, you're going to want to look back historically at what that person's earning potential is. For the person who is paying, you're going to want to be able to make the argument as to, well, how long is it going to take for me to get back into the workforce? Maybe the company that I work for is now closed, or the restaurant that I work for is now closed, and I've applied to 20 places and I can't seem to get in somewhere. What I want you to take away from this is that if you're unemployed or if the other person is unemployed, their child support payment may not automatically go down. It's really fact specific, and it's really based on the arguments that are made to a judge.
I have a kind of different topic I wanted to ask you guys about. One of the big things I'm hearing from my clients is questions about co-parenting. And a question I'm seeing is along the lines of, with everything going on, I'm really overwhelmed and don't know where to start when it comes to figuring out a new schedule with my ex for my kid now that I'm homeschooling and working from home. Stay-at-home orders are kind of in place. That's in flux. And they're asking where they begin when they're talking about a new possession schedule. So Kelly, what do you think about that?
First thing to know is that, and Angie mentioned it with regard to child support, but that your current order is still in place. Stay-at-home orders do not apply to custody agreements. In other words, the coronavirus is not an excuse or a reason to withhold a child from the other parent. The Texas Supreme Court has entered orders about this, and most states have done the same. That being said, if you and your ex mutually agree to vary the schedule temporarily, that is fine, put it in writing, but absent an agreement otherwise, the underlying court order, no matter how long ago it was entered, still stands. And if you do withhold the child, when this is over, just know that the other parent might be entitled to some makeup time, or you might be subject to an enforcement action. So just keep that in mind when making your decisions. And the framework remains what is in the best interest of the child. That remains the guiding principle. So that should be at the top of your mind when you're making any decisions to follow an order or to not follow an order.
So Kelly, I have a lot of clients that are saying, we want to work together. We've been talking, we've been communicating. We want to come up with a plan going forward. And, you know, a lot's changing right now with the new orders we received from the governor. So whereas we were feeling in flux before, we're feeling a little bit of that flux now. Can you talk a little bit about what they should keep in mind when making these types of plans with the parent when they're co-parenting?
Absolutely. If you have not already, be sure and talk to your co-parent and define what social distancing means in your respective households. Discuss what your expectations are regarding social distancing, homeschooling, exchanges of the children, and the like. Right now, most folks are saying no to play dates and trips to the store with the kids, but as the stay-at-home orders begin to lift, as we're seeing this week, at least here in Texas, that might begin to change, and it's going to become an issue that needs to be addressed, I think, frequently over the next few weeks. Other questions to address with your co-parent might include, is one parent better able to support homeschooling, either due to his or her job or better access to the internet? Does one parent have a job that requires contact with the public and therefore possibly a greater risk to those in his or her home? Is somebody in your household a high risk group? Does a grandparent live with you? How will that be addressed? Open communication and transparency is key. Now is not the time to play a gotcha game that we see so frequently in family law. I'm naive to think that all information is shared between co-parents post-divorce or post-separation, but now is not the time for not sharing information. If you think you've had an exposure to COVID-19, let the other parent know immediately so it can be dealt with in a way that ensures the health of your child.
So Are you seeing some people changing their schedules to reduce the number of exchanges or to maximize parenting time?
Absolutely. What I'm seeing with my clients is the need to be flexible and be creative if at all possible. Creativity can come into play now with a possible change in visitation. I can give you examples of 2 scenarios and cases that I've seen in my own clients, cases. One was a situation where dad had visitation pursuant to the basic standard possession order, which is Thursdays during the school year for a couple hours in the evening, and first, third, and fifth weekends of every month from 6 p.m. on Friday until 6 p.m. on Sunday. In this particular case, the only reason dad had basic standard instead of expanded standard, which would include Sunday nights on his weekends, and those Thursdays would be overnights, was because he lived so far away from mom's house that with traffic, it just didn't work. With Austin traffic, he couldn't get the child to school in time without waking the child up really early. So what they were doing, now that both parents are working from home and the child's not in a formal school setting and doing online learning, to lessen the exchanges and give dad some more time, they've agreed to extend dad's weekend to Monday nights or Tuesday mornings for the time being. And the son seems to be happy with it, and dad can help out with schoolwork that he normally hadn't been able to do. So that's working. Another example is the parties had an expanded standard during the school year and then week on, week off in the summer. And they've just decided to go ahead and start week on, week off now, and that's working for them. Of course, these options don't work for everyone, but it's just some examples of creative ways that I've seen folks deal with schedules.
You know, on that note, though, I think one of the concerns is if I'm going to switch my schedule up, doesn't that set some sort of precedent? I mean, can't that be used against me in the future? Have you gotten those types of questions?
Absolutely. And I do think realistically, once the courts open back up, there will be a flood of hearings surrounding the pandemic. Any agreements you can make that alter your possession schedule should be in writing. And if it's meant to be temporary, say it's temporary in your written agreement. I have a case where a parent is an ER doctor and he is foregoing most of his in-person visits right now and just supplementing with calls and FaceTime but we have documented over and over in writing that it is just due to his profession and due to the pandemic. And so that's an example of what I mean by document and cover your bases. On the other hand, I've had clients ask, well, if I agree to this change, won't whatever the new schedule be setting a precedent? And yes, it can. But if that parent is also telling me it's working and that schedule's working, then especially for the child, then think about if that's truly a bad thing, or if you're resisting the change due to something else, whether it be support or control. And it goes back to what's in the best interest of your child. But the bottom line is to protect yourself, put everything in writing, keep a journal or a calendar, send each other fax-based texts and emails. If you're keeping records, you can show the efforts you made and what you were doing to keep the child safe. If you do have to have a hearing, the judges will be looking at who was reasonable and making adjustments under the circumstances.
So in addition to seeing clients who are trying to navigate the existing orders that they have, figure out co-parenting arrangements, work with each other on the fly, what I'm also seeing is, unfortunately, some of our clients are feeling a little bit stuck. I've had a few situations where client files for divorce. There was a plan for a spouse to move out. Great plan, timing was terrible. And spouse isn't going anywhere. Everybody's stuck in the same house. Spouse and, everybody knows what's coming, but they just can't quite make the change yet. That seems to be resulting in a lot of anger. And especially when there are kids in the house, a lot of yelling, frustration. So I wanted to turn to Nicole and ask, from a therapeutic standpoint, do you have advice for people who are dealing with anger right now whenever they don't get what they really want or what they were planning on happening?
Absolutely. The first thing I would say is to assure them that they're not alone in experiencing these intense emotions. It's a stressful time that we're in. Even without the stress of being in the middle of divorce and still living with your partner, emotions are very high. And feeling angry is okay. But it's important that the anger and all of our emotions are not bottled up. But we have to figure out a way we can maintain control over those angers. So outward expressions of anger, like yelling, they can negatively affect our relationships. So some things that I would suggest just in the moment, it's important to acknowledge that you're feeling angry, validate it. Okay, I'm angry. It's okay to be angry, but I can't react. I don't want to react. So then it could be a few seconds of a deep breath or something to reflect before you react. And sometimes if you feel like you can't calm down, you need to just walk outside, get some air. If your kids are safe, if you have kids at home, you can take a second to go outside. Very often, in schools, kids are taught to take a couple deep breaths. What actually is a great technique is something a little bit more technical than that, but it's called box breathing. And I'm just going to tell you real quick, it's a really easy technique for when you're overwhelmed. And I will hold up a little diagram. Can y'all see that? Okay. So you're going to inhale for the count of 5, expand the belly, then the diaphragm and the upper chest, and you're breathing out of your nose. Then hold the breath for 5 seconds. Exhale the breath from the lungs for 5 seconds. And then hold again for 5 seconds. And you repeat this. You can start with a 1 to 3 times. And you will feel your body relax. You will feel some of your anger dissipate. Now, it's not going to completely go away. This is just a quick thing to do. It's also something really easy to teach your kids who you're there with.
Thank you.
Okay, well, my question's a little bit different than Kristiana's. It's more about, and I want to think about it as a lot of people have had activities that have been taken away, spring break, vacations, concerts and stuff like that. But I feel like I can resonate, or I feel this way sometimes. I don't feel anything. Like I feel numb. I feel like I have no feelings, and that kind of sometimes it makes me feel not normal. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's quite possible that you might be experiencing great grief. I think most of us are experiencing grief, and we don't always go to that thought when we're, in the midst of what we're going through. It's coming out as anger, it's coming out as anxiety. But when we're numb, very often it could just be you're like just head down trying to get through the day and you're not really feeling anything else. But grieving is a normal reaction to what we're going through right now. We're all experiencing multiple overwhelming loss. So don't be surprised. And if other people are out there feeling numb, that this is probably what's going on. For others, there might be feelings of apathy, insomnia, poor increased appetite, anxiety, irritability. Everyone goes through these stages different times in different orders. There's no right way to grieve. Something that I will throw out there is that journaling is a really powerful tool for processing emotions. You don't have to filter anything. It's an opportunity to just drill down, be honest with yourself. It's also really healing. So people often are like, oh, it's not going to help. I don't know what to write. So you might just write about the impact that COVID-19 or quarantine has had on your life and relationships. Maybe describe the challenges and the tensions that you're feeling. There are even prompts out there. I mean, something as simple as today I'm really missing, or I'm having a hard time with. You don't need to do much more digging in at this point, but just getting it out is really therapeutic.
Nicole, what about, so you talked about, different styles of coping. What if your partner or your ex-partner has a different style? What if, I'm numb and they're really anxious about it, what kind of tips do you have about co-parenting when your coping styles are different?
Oh, well, I guess there's two things here. I mean, if you're talking about your co-parent, you're not in the same homes. If you're talking about your, partner and you are in the same homes, I mean, but for both situations, you need to be communicating that both of what you're experiencing is real, that there's not a right way and a wrong way to be feeling. But I think if you're, in the same home and you're both, dealing with it differently, it gives you a better opportunity to sit down and have those conversations, because there is no right way to be feeling right now. Acknowledge that sometimes people are going to be really anxious, and that's okay. And we're not going to judge other people's emotions, or we shouldn't be judging other people's emotions and how they're coping.
Nicole, I have a question. I have a client that can't stop worrying, and she's pretty anxious already, and this is kind of ramped up, so to speak. She can't focus on anything except cleaning her house and sanitizing and having the news on 24/7 and all the news feeds going constantly. And I'm kind of guilty of that too. But she shared with me that her kids are starting to feel some of that anxiety, and she can see that they're exhibiting some of those signs as well. What can she do to make sure her kids feel safe?
So I'll focus on the kids, because her anxiety is another thing, and I would have some other tips for that. But something that I always like to educate my clients about, anxiety is contagious. If there's someone near you panicking, or if someone near you is panicking, you might start to worry, because you don't want to feel like, well, this person's worrying and I'm not worrying. What's wrong? I must be missing something. Think about this with your children. They pick up on our emotions. They pick up on all of our emotions, but anxiety specifically. And so they look to us to get cues for how we should behave. It can be very helpful during periods of anxiety or panic to ground yourself in the present. When your mind is bouncing around between various anxious thoughts, or you're just flipping the channels and trying to get as much news as you can, or if kids are experiencing some of these anxious behaviors also, there's a fun exercise, again, that I like to do even with my kids. Like if they're crying or upset about something, a fun grounding activity is to use your 5 senses. And the first thing you're going to do is, I don't know if y'all can see this, acknowledge 5 things you see around you. It could be a pen, a spot on the ceiling. Acknowledge 4 things you can touch around you. Acknowledge 3 things you hear. And then 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Might sound silly, but it really does make you become very present, because you're looking around for things, or you really have to think, what am I tasting right now? That automatically will reduce some of the anxiety, or at least stop you for a moment. So I would practice that with your kids if you're seeing them be anxious, and then go back and work on some of your anxiety also.
Thank you.
So along with anxiety, it seems like there is a roller coaster of other emotions in my house. I have a 2nd grader who has a lot of really big emotions, and some mornings are great with schoolwork and we're happy, and some are everybody cries, nobody wins, mom included. So my question, Nicole, is how do we manage these big feelings? How do I model controlling my own feelings for her? How do we get through these days that feel like Groundhog Day over and over? It's the same thing. I'm really tired. Do you have any advice for me personally? Can I get some free therapy right now while we're here?
All really tired.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel this too. I have 3 kids. I feel this too. I think something that has been helpful, and I'm reading a lot about so much of this, So I don't want to overwhelm people, because I even was working with a client the other day and she's like, everyone's saying I need a routine. I need a routine. Because honestly, that was what kind of I went to. But when you think about a routine, think about kind of what matched your life before. You know, you get up in the morning and you're going to do kind of the same things that you've always done. You know, get out of your pajamas, you know, brush your teeth. And then I also think of schedule as blocks of time. So, you know, exercise or physical activity is important. So maybe one block of time is to get your heart rate up. And for kids, I mean, my kids found this video. It's called Jump and, what is it? Rhyme and Freeze. It's on like YouTube or something. And I have them jumping until the words don't rhyme. So whatever it is you can find. Or if you want to, go outside and go for a walk, maintaining, you know, social distance. But so it doesn't have to be from 9 to 10, but during the day, you definitely want to go get your heart rate up. So keeping some routine is really helpful. When kids are having big feelings, I always kind of go back to, and I don't know if your babies were like this or people have had babies when they're crying and crying and crying. I remember saying, if I go outside, that's their off switch. Like I could take my screaming baby outside and sit down and they would stop crying because they would start looking around, even newborns. So change of scenery, change of location, give them a hug. Lots of kids are acting out right now because we're busy with other things. We might be cleaning, we might be working, we might be all of these things. And so when they see us, there's this outpouring of emotion. That is a big sign for us as parents to think of, okay, this is time for connection. Let's try to find some connection with my kiddo. And, you know, maybe you sit with them on the couch. Maybe you go outside and play a game. It doesn't have to be huge. Sometimes I just go and sit by my kid while they're playing, you know, a video game or something. That's even enough connection if I have zero energy because I'm exhausted. Is that helpful?
Yeah, Nicole, what tips do you have for people that are living in two separate households with two very different routines? How do they explain to their kids that at mom's house it's like this and at dad's house it's like this during this time?
Absolutely. So I actually have a 13-year-old and he has 2 homes. And there's different routines in both homes. And I think when he was younger, now it's a little bit easier for him to understand, obviously, but when he was younger, the routines were different. And I just said, you know, listen, we have a routine and dad has a routine, and there's nothing wrong with his routine being different than ours, and vice versa. I also have always encouraged communication though. Like if you really like to do this in the morning when you wake up, because we do that here, talk to dad, let him know that this is, you know, you really like to go jump on the trampoline in the morning, and can we do this before we change clothes? You know, whatever. So communicate. And so modeling for your kids or coaching them into communicating what their needs are. But I mean, my go-to thing still to this day is, you know, dad has his rules and I have my rules, and they're all fine. And, you know, talk to us about them if you don't like them. And at 13, he definitely talks to us about them if he doesn't like our rules. So it's worked.
Kristiana, I have a question for you. So, you know, we're talking about, in some instances, being in a house with, you know, your partner who you may be potentially divorcing soon. Can you talk a little bit about when that becomes volatile? So when things are up and down, what do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I just did a little blog post for us on that, so I did some research. So I'm glad you asked me about that. What I tell my clients whenever they're in a situation with somebody who has a tendency to kind of fly off the handle in the best of situations, I tell them that they know better than anybody else when there is something wrong, when their partner or their spouse is acting in a way that is just not right, that threatens mental health or physical safety. You know, I only hear stories. Nobody knows except you. You live in the house. You have to trust your instincts. That's a big thing. You know, pay attention to how you feel. And if things are escalating, you need to have a safety plan. And when I say safety plan, what I mean by that is think about where you can go. Think about who can help you. Think about what you're going to need to take with you. You don't want to be in the situation where you leave under really stressful circumstances and there's something you had to have and you don't have it because you don't want to go back once you've left. It's incredibly dangerous. Another thing you really want to think about is how to safely get your children out of an unsafe situation. You don't want to leave without your kids if you can possibly avoid it. If you're going somewhere where you can't take your kids with you, figure out where you can leave your kids. Another thing that I really recommend, don't let the shame of the fighting in your house keep you from talking to people. You need to talk to your friends. You need to find a neighbor you trust and have a way to have a safe place if things escalate. This is one thing that I came across in researching my blog that I thought was really interesting. A lot of experts recommend having a safe word or like a code word, either with your friends, family members, your lawyer. There's some sad instances we've heard about that lately with needing code words with lawyers. And if you need help, that code word can mean call the police, and it's different this time. So we don't want to think about it. Unfortunately, sometimes right now people are at their very worst and they're turning to drugs and alcohol and not handling it well, and that can lead to volatile situations. So, look at Safe Austin. They have great resources. There's a national domestic violence hotline that's really good. A lot of these you can text. You don't have to call. Sometimes you can't get in a safe space. So just remember, as soon as you can, call 911 if you need it. And then when you're safe, talk to a lawyer. There are a lot of different legal actions that we can take for you to help keep you safe and your kids safe in the situation. And also the Travis County Family Violence webpage has fantastic tips for if you're in a dangerous situation, and also if you're leaving the house, tips for leaving. So I like my clients to be prepared and have kind of a mental checklist ready.
Kristiana, switching gears a little bit, I have a question that's a frequent topic among my friends and clients. How are we supposed to juggle homeschooling and our kids while we're working from home? Do you have any tips on that?
The work-life balance question
Yes.
on steroids, right? As my house was falling apart last night, I thought, it's kind of funny that we're giving this seminar. Blind leading the blind on some days, other days are better. But I joke because, on Facebook, there's the meme going around, check on your friends with kids because they're not all right. Have you seen that? That's pretty much my friend chat going on in text. Really, it seems like everybody feels like they're failing at most aspects of their lives right now. I think you guys can probably all relate to that. Kids or no kids, married, divorced, single. Sometimes your dogs are driving you crazy while you're trying to work. I mean, it just feels like, it feels like everything is kind of at its worst, right? So, man, a lot of pressure. But one thing I like to tell people is if you're co-parenting in 2 households, or if you're trying to parent with a spouse who has a different style than you, kind of like what Angie was mentioning earlier, wow, do the differences in parenting styles get really exaggerated. Things I didn't think I cared about, I suddenly care a whole lot about, and it can be a little bit intense. For example, there are a lot of different opinions about how much schoolwork should be done right now. Some of you can probably relate to that. It feels like some parents, those of us who have kind of the type A tendencies, believe that every single assignment is worth the effort and the time, and that's what our kids should be doing. Let's try it all. Others, it's like school's already out for summer, right? I think most of us are somewhere in between, but whether you're living with a parent that you're co-parenting with, or if it's 2 homes, you got to talk about it. Like Nicole was saying, you've got to communicate. If you care about schoolwork and your ex doesn't, do a great job homeschooling 3 days a week and just deal with the fact that you're going to have a feral child for 2 days a week. It's hard, right? We're all compromising. It's not necessarily how we want it to be, but I think there's kind of a relief in just accepting you cannot control the other parent. You cannot control the other house. You got to figure out how to manage it. But the most important thing is whatever you do, please try not to put your kid in the middle of it. They do not need to hear you complain about the other parent forcing too much schoolwork or not doing enough. That is just exacerbating really difficult things right now. I don't think the judge, personally, I could be wrong. Gosh, I hope I'm not. I don't think the judges are going to be terribly hard on parents who didn't get all the schoolwork done. You know, we're looking at a pass-fail situation. I think, you know, if you have a co-parent who doesn't seem to be taking it seriously, and there is a tendency to not take education very seriously in your co-parenting relationship, like Nicole said, keep a journal, take notes about what's bothering you, what's going on. As an attorney, I have to warn you, we do subpoena those journals sometimes, or we'll ask for them in discovery. So think about what you write down. But, you know, it shouldn't be a deal breaker with your custody. It really shouldn't if you can't do every single thing a teacher assigns. But consider if there's a pattern, there could be more to it, and it might go to that. So another thing to think about, if one parent's job is prioritized over another, kind of like what Kelly was mentioning, if one is an ER doctor and the other has kind of a lighter load right now, then you really need to think about that when you're considering who should be taking on the majority of homeschooling. Coronavirus, parenting is not a contest. If it were, we'd all be losing. You know, frankly. I lately have been listening to Brene Brown's podcast. You guys like Brene Brown? I feel like who doesn't, right? But she talked about, she rolled it out when we started doing stay at home. And she talked about doing check-ins with your family and saying how you're doing that day. And saying, I only have 20% to give today. And this family has to get to 100%. You know, we got to get the schoolwork done. I have a bunch of papers to do. I have so much going on. I can't do it. I need help. But asking your partner and your child, can you do a little bit extra today? How are you today? Can you meet me and help me get to that 100%? And I just thought that was such a refreshing way to be vulnerable, to communicate with your family. You know, it's tough to ask for help, but we all just need to be open with each other and try to communicate what we need. And that goes to, I am not the best homeschool teacher today. You know, other days I can sit and do math. I can handle it. Some days, not so much. Some days, not great. But it might not translate to a relationship with your ex. You know, some people have co-parents that they can communicate with. Some don't. It could help to try, is my position on that. And you have to consider the alternative. If you're struggling and you don't ask your co-parent for help, how can they come and help you? They're not going to show up for you if they don't know you need it. And a lot of my clients are worried about their ex taking advantage of their vulnerabilities, right? I think most judges are going to be pretty hard on someone who comes in and says, can you believe this guy? He needed extra help whenever his job was really, he was struggling with the kids and he asked me for help. Can you believe that? We should use that against him. I don't think judges are going to do that. So we'll see, but use your best judgment. Ask for help. If it doesn't work out, you tried. We'll have to see. And another issue, some kids are really acting out right now. They are stressed. Sometimes it's because they miss their friends at school, their teachers. Sometimes it's because they pick up our stress. My advice to co-parents is that you really need to work with each other to figure out a plan for discipline. It's got to be clear, and it needs to be consistent regardless of which house the child is at. And also, do not wait until you're in the moment to make the decision about what punishment and consequences are appropriate. You don't want to be angry when you think about it for the first time. And that will help protect both you and your child. And also, if you think about the future, unfortunately, whenever people really lose it on their kids, it comes up, it's an issue. And you need to protect yourself from your feelings and your anxieties by knowing that you're not going to cross that line and knowing that you and your co-parent have the same kind of idea of what that line should be. So talk about discipline, decide what's appropriate, and be consistent. And when all else fails,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think lots of kids' behaviors are increased because they are experiencing the same emotional stuff that we are, and it comes out in behavior. So it's some of the behaviors, I mean, at least with what a couple of my kiddos, it's behavior that I've never seen before. Like, you're screaming, what, this isn't you, this might be someone else, but this isn't you. And it really is so much of, this is so confusing. They're angry about missing everything. Birthday was missed. They're grieving all of this too. So yes, be on the same page, have a plan, but also acknowledge that they are struggling also. And maybe come at it from a connection point.
Right. Like, don't hold your kids to the same standard you normally would. Maybe,
Yeah.
Have a little,
Really,
what was that?
I said something you said really resonated. It's the, even if you don't typically communicate that way, I've had clients say, I've tried communicating with him. I've put it in an email, and frankly, I just gave up. I gave up a few years. My advice is, even if you feel dumb repeating the same stuff over and over again, I'm putting my attorney hat on and I'm thinking, I have this in writing to him 20 times, and this is the response 20 times. It's a pattern at this point. It's a pattern that I'm not getting a response, and I'm actively trying. So what you said in that, put it out there, communicate. I think it's important, even if you're not getting a response when you're communicating.
Totally agree.
You might be surprised. I have definitely had some people report better communication with their ex-partner.
I have too. I've had clients say that they're communicating better than ever. It's been about 50-50, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that I've tried to approach this whole crazy situation with opposing counsels, with clients, with my own family, with my lovely colleagues, is just to think, whenever somebody drops the ball, whenever I mess up, just think, this person is trying the best they can in this moment. Just remember that. And for those of you who are type A parents like me, sometimes you need to look in the mirror and say that to yourself. You're just trying the best you can in this moment. And if that includes opening yourself up and asking for help from your co-parent, we totally support you with that. As attorneys, we like to see our clients trying to be creative and work together. And it's just really important. We have a good question from one of the participants. She's asking, she's in a separation. Her child is with her 100% of the time, and the father is interested in resuming some possession. The primary concern is that dad has been staying around a girlfriend and 2 teenage daughters and doesn't trust that they're maintaining the same amount of social distancing that's appropriate, and asking about the legal risks of maintaining 100% possession of the child at all times. That's a tough one.
It is. It's very tough. And, a lot of this is to be determined. We just don't know yet, because the courts are really reserved right now for true emergencies. Child is in serious danger of irreparable harm. So that's why document everything. But the bottom line is, if you have temporary orders right now, then those are what's in place, and you need to do your best to follow those. And if, if of course you make the decision to not follow them, then just know that you could be looking at an enforcement action in the future. And so be prepared, and just know that's the risk you're going to run.
And don't you guys get the feeling from the judges, based on, we've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings with judges and trying to figure out how to best serve clients at this time. Don't you, Angie and Kelly, get the feeling that when we come back from this, judges are getting overwhelmed by people who are withholding their kids? And that when you're in a situation where you've decided to withhold your child, it's not just you appearing in front of the judge. It's every other person who's decided that their situation is unique and justifies excluding themselves from the Supreme Court orders to follow your possession schedule. So I have concerns whenever I have clients in that situation, because I don't want them to pay the price for a bunch of other people making decisions that might not have been as well founded, right? So that's one where you really need to talk to your lawyer or consult with an attorney if you don't have a lawyer about potential
Absolutely.
consequences. Because you might be right. You might be in a situation where it is just flagrant and it's dangerous. But you also have to consider, you know, there was a Florida case recently with a doctor whose possession schedule was suspended because, you know, the child's dad thought mom was too much of a risk since she was working in the ER, but that got overturned. We don't want our people on the front lines to lose possession and access to their kids. So that's something that these judges are thinking about, right? Like if they decide that you should have a situation where dad doesn't get to see your child, what does that mean for everybody else, right? So just keep that in mind and talk to a lawyer about it before you make any big comments, especially via text message.
Agreed.
So on that note, Kristiana, what can be done right now since, you know, I mentioned courts are closed except for emergencies type things. So what, you know, if I want to file for divorce, can I, what are we able to do?
Sure. Yes, you can file for divorce. That is a question that I've been getting as well. You can still have people served. You can still conduct discovery, which for those of you who have not been involved in discovery, lucky you. But for everybody else who knows, it's just, you know, collecting documents, answering questions, asking questions that need to be asked to lay the foundation and the groundwork for the trial that you're going to have when the courts resume. We can still attend virtual mediation. That has been hugely successful. People have really been responsive to that. We have some fantastic mediators in town who are helping us figure it out. Family law seems to be pretty tech savvy. We're trying to keep clients safe and get things done. So that's a huge hit. We can also, fortunately, submit agreed orders and decrees to the court. So let's say that you filed your divorce 3 months ago, you come to an agreement, everybody signed off. All we have to do now under these temporary conditions is have a client execute an affidavit covering some foundational jurisdictional questions, and then we submit those agreed orders to the court, and it's fantastic. We've been getting pretty quick turnaround from the courts, usually about maybe a day or two, sometimes a week, but typically not longer than that. And so it has been great to see that we can still help wrap things up. And going back to what I was discussing earlier, if we need a temporary restraining order or if you are in an unsafe situation, you can still get a protective order. They are still actively hearing those emergency questions, looking at those issues and trying to keep people safe. And another thing, if you have a divorce pending or a suit affecting parent-child relationship and you really just need some relief and you need to figure out how to live under temporary orders, what can we do? You can't come to an agreement. You can still request a hearing for temporary orders from the court. If the court thinks it's something that they need to hear to make a decision, they will set a Zoom hearing. And if they believe that it's something that could be handled by written submission, then they will let you know and they might handle it that way. So we've been very pleased that with some of these tricky issues, the court is making themselves increasingly available to hear us. So there's a lot you can do. Don't give up hope. We can help you move forward and keep going, even if it's on camera.
100%. We had some really good questions about child support in our little chat section. One of them, and I'm going to kick it to one of you, Kristiana or Kelly. One of them is someone who has a spouse that, or an ex-spouse that has been working in the restaurant industry, and he's making significantly less than usual. He's not able to make payments. What's the expectation on what he's supposed to be doing now? Can he pay as much as he can? Is that going to roll over? What he owes, is that going to be rolled over? What is it?
So basically, whatever your underlying order says, no matter how many years ago it was entered, that stands. And so the state disbursement unit, that address in San Antonio where everybody mails their child support to, acts as a clearinghouse, and they just check the box on if he's paid. You know, if he pays $300 a month and he only paid $150, then he'll be in arrears that $150 up until yes, it's carried over. I mean, up until the child ages out. And so, yes, but from your end, as far as the obligee, you need that money. So, I mean, your expenses don't go away. So, if he could pay what he can and then, make it up when things get better. But yes, technically that arrearage amount does carry over and carry forward.
And with interest if it goes unpaid for a long
Yes,
time.
and with interest.
About that.
Another question that we had that's kind of along the same lines is parents that are working together and they're trying to figure out what's fair. But in doing that, the parent that's receiving money, it really depends on the money each month to get by. So in that situation, is there an obligation to come to an agreement, or will the child support that has been ordered to pay still stand? What do you think?
I don't think a judge is going to look down on anybody who refuses to agree to reduce a child support amount. I mean, if you can't come to an agreement, that's what the court's there for. If you do want to try to figure out what's fair, which is kind of a 4-letter word in family law because it feels like nothing's fair, you can look at the Attorney General has essentially a child support guidelines table that will tell you percentages that should be applied to your net resources. Now, it's not an easy formula. They do have a calculator you can enter information into, but it gets really in the weeds. If you have multiple households, if you have two children in different households, that's a different percentage. But fundamentally, the court is going to be looking at what income you have coming in from wherever it's coming in and apply, if you have one child, it's typically 20% of your net resources. Now, if we're talking about also paying for insurance, that's factored in. There are a lot of different aspects that require more investigation and more information. So not to be a broken record, but you should speak to your lawyer about that. Maybe just check in and say, is this close to what I would get from a court? And if it is, it might not be worth it to go to a hearing about that, right? Because we don't want you to waste money if you're going to lose. If they have been unemployed for 8 months and didn't make that much before, it's not likely that you're going to be able to keep it at the same level. But there are a lot of factors to consider. So if it really hurts you financially, I don't think a judge is going to look down on you if you say, Your Honor, I just couldn't agree to it because I depended on it for my mortgage, and that's part of the agreement we had. So it's not a foregone conclusion.
I agree 100% with that. If you're taking the lion's share right now and you're unable to come to an agreement because of that reason, yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard because you feel like you want to help the father of your child, but if you're unable to, that's okay. Someone else asked a really good question. They have had their child 100% of the time. So they're taking on those expenses as well. What kind of advice do you have for a parent? How could that be used to help them in the future? Could that be used against the other parent? What advice do you have for that type of person situation?
Kristiana, do you want to, so much of this is unknown and for how long it's going to be. Do you have 100% for the last 6 weeks and then the rest of the year is normal? Kristiana, what do you think?
Yeah, is this parent going to be exercising some kind of makeup time? If so, will they be?
Yeah, will it be evened out at the end of all of this whenever it's?
Much like everything in family law, keep a record, document it.
Document
some receipts and say, hey, I know things are difficult right now under this situation. We've had these extra expenses that normally would be either shared between us or covered by one of us. Could you help out? And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking. Now, are they obligated to pay? No, I wouldn't say.
But you don't know unless you ask. That's
right.
True.
Yes, I think if you take anything away from this is communicate it. Communicate.
And
Please
document.
do it in writing. Your lawyers will ask you to please communicate in writing.
Yes.
So
Well, I think we're about out of time. Do we have any more questions that you wanted to go over? I think we're good.
I think we covered it. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys have a great afternoon. Good luck.
Good luck.
Hang in there.